Jack, I got a question for you.
Hey.
So you you fired off this Teddy Roosevelt quote in our little introductory Zoom call.
Hmm.
The black hair rarely sits behind a rider whose pace is fast enough, meaning that basically your thoughts or the shadows can't catch you if you're constantly moving. And what I said to you was that, when I stop moving, my anxiety catches up. So like
Hmm.
I always keep moving. And in the last 2 weeks, I haven't been as busy as normal. So my anxiety's picked up. What, how do you relate that quote into when you said, I was haunted by a deep sadness
Mm.
until I learned to keep myself busy chasing girls, social status, and academic success? What were you running away from the thought of Christianity, growing up in that, or how did you relate? I know that it may have been addressed, but I didn't hear it.
For me, I think some people, I don't know exactly why this is, but some people lean more toward anxiety and some people lean more toward depression. The anxiety is it's like this pressure. It's a fear. It's like the pressure of uncertainty. Um, I I am not the kind of person who leans toward anxiety. I lean toward depression. So when things at that point I was just looking at life thinking this doesn't matter. Like nothing here matters. And so I just felt very dark and sad and purposeless and um disconnected from other people because of that. Cause it's like, what are we even doing? Like this is stupid. But what I found was through activity, I could forget about that. And I know that it's also true for anxiety. I mean, it's a similar solution to a kind of the opposite problem, if I can say that. But I think how that works is if you look at take a look at the tower. So we have these orienting maps and we're asking ourselves, number one, what is? Number two, where should I go? And number three, how do I get there? And the how turns into another what is, where do I go, how do I get there? And then that how turns into another what is, where do I go, how do I get there? Until your how becomes a particular action. So what is? I'm writing a book. What should be? I want it to be really good. How do I do that? I invite my friends to help me write it. Well, how do I do that? I'll message all my friends who I think would be interested, but I'd like to have a few more people. So that's my should. How do I get more people? I run a YouTube ad. Well, how do I run a YouTube ad? That boils down until I literally have my mouse in my hand and I'm like clicking buttons on my computer. That's particular action. Well, so the Teddy Roosevelt solution, black hair rarely sits behind the rider whose pace is fast enough. What that means is that if your foundation makes you depressed or anxious because it's not solid, you can focus on the particular action and just not worry about that stuff. It works, but it's not a good solution because that what the anxiety is telling you, or in my case, what the depression was telling me is your foundation is off. Like, and you know it, and you can keep yourself busy to avoid thinking about it. It's not, I don't want to be trivial about that. There is nothing more terrifying than going down to the foundation. Seriously, it is nothing takes more courage than looking at that, because I sent you guys the alternate version. If you read that, you might have seen in brackets the monster parent story. So I'll tell you the monster parent story. When I was a kid, I had a dream that my parents were monsters. And it was vivid and it was scary. And they transformed, their body transformed. They had these big teeth and they were like going and like trying to eat me. And it felt so real that when I woke up, I thought, are my parents actually monsters? Because in the dream, they first looked like my parents. But then once I noticed, that they were monsters, they transformed from human beings into monsters, and then they came after me because their cover was blown, I guess. Like the monsters didn't want to get discovered. And once I saw that they were there, then they wanted to eat me. So I woke up and I was like, is that true? Are they really monsters? And I really didn't know. And I wanted to go and ask them, like, Mom, Dad, are you monsters? But I was scared that what happened in my dream would happen in reality, that like as soon as I asked them, then they'd be like, he knows, he's on to us, we have to eat him. I believed it. I didn't know. The only way for me to find out was I had to have the courage to go and ask them. Otherwise, it maybe they're monsters, maybe they're not. Like maybe they're human beings, or maybe they're just undercover. You can't, like, if you're going to look down into the depths of things and ask a scary question like, okay, here I am, I'm born. What the fuck? Is there any point to this? Maybe the answer is no. If you're not willing to accept no, if no is the truth, you cannot ask the question. But if no is the truth, then your life is pointless. Which means basically you might as well be dead. You don't know that that's true until you ask. And you have to ask it seriously. And you risk your whole entire life when you ask that question seriously. Like that's not an exaggeration. In order to ask that question, you have to risk your life. Because I put it in the Shakespeare quote, like it's a cliche, to be or not to be. But if you read what Hamlet is saying there, he's saying this life really sucks. There's a lot of stuff here that's terrible. Would it be better to be dead? And Shakespeare says that is the question. Well, guess what? It's actually kind of the question. Here I am. I didn't ask to be here. I'm alive. It's partly terrible. Would it be better for me to be dead? Because I could be dead. Like if I don't want to be here, I don't have to stay. I could leave. But I think that many people don't ask that question because they don't know, they won't want to know the answer, just like I didn't want to know if my parents were monsters. Like if I don't ask, then I can just carry on being the writer being the writer who outpaces depression and anxiety. But as soon as I ask the question, I'm no longer innocent. As soon as I ask the question, I can't pretend that I don't know. So that trick doesn't work anymore.